Resistance. No, no, no.
Push the silver button.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on episode 64 of The Treat Show. Tonight we have a very special guest that I cannot wait to introduce. We have Elias. Elias is from the clinic and weed maps and plenty more. But let's just dive into this right now. And ta-da! There we go.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Let me see if I can make your camera look a little bit more clear. Sorry about that. How are you doing this evening, Elias?
Oh, I'm good. Just another day in paradise.
So like to hear. I feel all right. Well, I'm too scared to adjust it. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I can
dude.
play with the lens on here too.
I can lean back a little too and grab the mic. Whatever's
Just dropping the ball. I don't have my sound guy here tonight. I don't have my camera guy. Sorry, guys. We're crossing our fingers.
Oh, no worries.
Thank you. Well, let's dive into this. Could I start with, actually, what year did you start consuming cannabis? Or do you remember the first time?
Yeah, I think so. It was back in, Wyoming, back in the day when I was really young. I think I was probably 13 when I first started smoking.
It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. I mean, because, it's still, kind of low key over there. I can't drop too many names, but, one of my buddies who ended up, going to the Army, becoming very successful, some of the first people I actually started smoking with, and, in the small town, you're dealing with, the good old brown weed, so.
No, I think especially at honestly 13 teenage years like that, it's kind of, do you remember being excited or thinking that it was super pretty or awesome, or do you remember kind of looking at it how do I go about this, or why does this look like this?
No, when I first tried it, I already knew kind of what to do. High Times magazines and all that.
That's cool.
All of us were really into that. It's kind of funny at the 7-Eleven. It's crazy. It was a 7-Eleven back then. Where they had the porn mags, they'd also have the High Times magazines, and they'd be blacked out, right? Because,
They do the same kind of thing?
yeah, well, they'd have this black sheet above them. That way you couldn't see that the High Times magazine had a nug photo. Dang. Couldn't see, the porn magazines had titties on the cover, but it said Playboy at the top or High Times at the top. And, we would send people we knew that were 18 in there, and they'd get us, porno mags
You get all the
and
goods.
High Times magazines, and we learned about all the old, Shiva skunks and all the old flavors and seen all the old pictures. And I don't know, I guess as a young kid, I kind of realized this is something I wanted to do. And, at that point, it wasn't even close to being legal in my area or even here in Colorado yet. So I don't know. Yeah, I grew up with weed, grew up around weed. I got everything I have right now because of weed. So.
Did your parents smoke, or were they more conservative?
My mother, I wasn't raised around her. I was raised by my grandmother.
Wow.
And yeah, she didn't like weed. The rest of my family, aunts and uncles, some of them smoked, some of them didn't. One of my uncles is kind of where I started smoking good shit, back in the day. I was 16.
That's cool.
But yeah, I mean, she never liked that I did it, but didn't try too hard to stop it,
I think that's pretty cool, though, that it seems like you and her uncle were really close, and
Yeah, for sure. We were pretty close, and yeah, he lived in Salt Lake City and he knew where to get good shit, so I'd drive up there and get it and bring it back to... This is why I'm talking about it, because I actually did get in trouble, and the cops back there already know I used to do it, so...
Wow.
But yeah, I used to trap a little bit back then, and got busted a couple times. And remember one time getting in trouble, and my grandma says, "Well, you're 17 and you're old enough to go to jail and get sentenced. You're old. Get the fuck out of my house." So
No. So you're at pretty. I mean, even in the couple minutes of just hearing this, it seems like you're pretty self-sufficient in warrior mode, pretty young though.
yeah, I was definitely self-sufficient. You know, my grandmother raised me, and she was a coal miner.
Wow.
So I mean, she didn't like go into the tunnels and the mines or anything. It was an open pit coal mine where I'm from.
Oh.
And I think it might still be one of the biggest open pit coal mines in the world. But back then it was called FMC, and I think she worked there for over 40 years.
Oh my gosh.
She was part of the union, so you know I grew up in a union family, so dealing with a couple strikes and all that in my time, it's always fun, you know.
That's crazy to think about, honestly.
Yeah, so I was born in Bakersfield, California, and I was raised in a small town in southwest Wyoming where it's oil fields, ranchers, and a mine, you know, and there's all sorts of mines and power plants. Like you said, you worked at Sinclair, you know what I mean?
Lots of oil rigs.
A lot of my friends back there work at Sinclair right now.
Wow.
I'm sure of it, so.
I feel like when you talk about switching from California, though, I know you were young, obviously, you're born there, but completely different. Like those that have never spent time in Wyoming, it's a very conservative state, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really like, you know, the weed too much back in the day. Now, honestly, they all know me there, you know, and they know what I do. So it's more of a laughing matter. Nobody ever bothers me. You know what I mean? I mean, all the money I make now is on paper, right? So it makes it a lot easier to go back and visit home. But there's definitely a lot of times where I did not want to go back and didn't. You know, I'd keep like a warrant out just so I had an excuse to not go back home. My family would be like, come see me. Oh, I can't. I got a warrant.
Skip, I feel like so if you were career-wise then, is if you were 16, 17 living over there, is like, when was your first job, I guess, ish?
Oh, man, for 15, working at this little restaurant called Taco Time in the town. It's still there to this day.
That's impressive.
I used to just help them stock the basement and shit like that. I'm good. I'll just hit this. Oh, you're good. But I don't know, worked for the city of Diamondville in the summer, you know, which is another town that was kind of connected to where I'm from, and just small shit. Started definitely working when I was young, though.
It seems like that's a really young age, honestly, to start grinding like that. So when did cannabis, you think, make a transition in your mind, at least, where you were like, I could see this turning into something more?
Well, you know, obviously when I first got a nice bag and all my friends wanted some, you know, so I started.
That's a good feeling.
I started, you know, selling it back home, illegal, and kind of living, you know, what I like to say, you know, sort of an outlaw style, you know. But I really didn't think it was going to be a legal future until I moved to Colorado in like 2009. I just knew that I was going to do it no matter what, you know, because I know that there was money in it, and I was used to making money on the down low and not paying taxes and not really working a real 9 to 5, you know, and still making money. So I knew that I'd come here and start doing the same thing, especially being in Colorado, where you could drive up to Boulder back then or Nederland, some fire ass weed, and all of a sudden, you know, call some people from wherever and they come and do whatever, you know.
Some of the best weed I've ever seen from those areas, Ned and Boulder. Yeah, especially around that time.
No doubt.
So 2009. I started in the industry as well in 2009, but I distinctively remember that year because it wasn't legal the way that it sounds to people. It's like you were still taking a huge risk and a huge gamble. Like, will I get arrested? So how did you do the caregiver program? Did you do anything? Yeah.
Certainly did. I actually didn't even get into the legal industry until end of 2012. Moved here in 2009. I was in this duplex house with some friends of mine, and they were friends with the neighbor. And he always had this fire ass weed. He had like sour diesel and Mama San, and funny enough, you know, Jack. You know, he had Jack Herrera and Durban poisons and all this kind of stuff. And he had the bags, right? But I'd be sleeping in the basement, which is adjacent to his basement, you know, and you could just smell that there's fresh weed down there. And the whole time I'm like, yeah, this guy's definitely growing some weed. And after getting to know him for a couple months, he hits him, you know, he said, hey, come over here, meet me up front on the stoop. And we start talking, and he's like, it smells like weed in the basement, huh? And I was like, yeah, fresh weed. And he's like, yeah, well, come down here. And he showed me, his grow, and he was getting ready to harvest. So the reason why he did that is because he obviously needed trimmers. So that's kind of where I got my into, touching the plant and being able to see it do its thing. And, my buddy Patrick, he had a couple different houses, right? It was back in the day where each house had, 4 lights. We were growing hydro. We were buying all of our equipment from the Big Tomato back in the day. And, you go in there and you try to talk about weed, and Jeremy and Josh and the guys are like, "Oh, you can't say the fucking weed word, tomatoes." I said, "Oh shit, all right." So it was still illegal, but there was that fine line, right? Mm-hmm. So, I was working with him for quite a long time. Was trimming and doing well, and eventually I got my own place and had my own 4-lighter down in the basement with a full veg, and that's when we started, really kind of pumping out weed. And, honestly, if Jason were here, it'd kind of be funny because, the strain that really kind of I was known for in my circle, obviously he's known for it everywhere else, but is the Bruce Banner, Awesome. My buddy went to, Delta 9 dispensary that he owned on Broadway, and somehow befriended him. He's a nice guy, so it's easy to be friends with my buddy Rory, I guess. And, we got a cut of that Bruce Banner 3, and I was crushing with it, like 3 pounds of light.
Damn, back then that's huge.
Yeah, HPS, all hydro. I remember having like beaver tail roots going all the way through to a 70-gallon, all the way to the back through the Evansville kid. It was crazy. So at that point, we started really getting some high-quality shit, and I started, backpacking into stores. I was like, I hear you can take this shit into stores. And one of my buddies like, yeah, you can just backpack it into these dispensaries.
Yeah, that is how it was.
So I filled my backpack up with pounds and walked to a few different ones. And, the third place I walked into, it was through mutual friends that I had met him. And it was, the Giving Tree.
Wow.
They're still there today.
Yeah.
Adam and Kendra over there. They were buying fucking weed from me for $4,400 a pound.
That.
And this was back in the day, and I was only able to really enjoy that, I don't know, it seems for like maybe a year.
Yeah.
Because I was late to the party. Everybody else in 2009 was doing that, right?
It's funny to hear you say late to the party now when we see these guys just starting, and they're like, you guys don't know how to do this. We're going to do it better. It's like, you just wait.
Well, and getting hired somewhere legally back then, it was like you were kind of starting to say earlier, because everybody was still hush hush, and all the people that were starting these businesses had the old hustle mentality. Mm-hmm. That you had to really kind of work hard to get involved with a dispensary.
I think even trimming is I think that was the most common and only way to get in, no matter your qualifications, because of honestly trust. I don't think people would trust you to just, yeah, you can have the keys to my grow. Well,
and the thing is, too, is we had, when I was trying to work at the clinic, and the thing is I actually tried to get that job for about a year.
Really?
Yeah. I was a patient there first, and I was spending like $16,000 a year there. Stupid.
Go back just 1 second, because I love that you say this. So the clinic was a pretty big deal in Colorado.
Huge. They were number 1.
Yes. So
there's no denying it. When
you say that you were part of the medical only days and quality weed, making that much per pound off your own weed I'd say the clinic they placed in every state competition first for everything for a while. So
state,
top
High
quality.
Times, Amsterdam for sure.
And they were working with Crockett or DNA.
Yeah.
And
they had the Kosher Kush here and a couple others, Tangy, some stuff like that.
Yes, I just want people to know really quick before we dive into the clinic is how it was like the dream job at the time.
It was. It was the only place I applied for.
Wow.
If I would have applied other places, I would have got a job, right? Easier.
Yep.
But I was always shopping there. I became friends with, a lot of the guys there.
It's expensive.
It was always good weed. I've been to many dispensaries, and they had the best at the time, so that's where I shopped. I just wanted to be a part of that vibe that they were creating. And, I worked the clinic golf tournament one year, and everybody's like, yeah, you should apply and see how you can get a job, blah, blah, blah. And you're right. The trimming situation, yes, that is another way to get in, but I didn't want to trim. having all those houses, I was already trimming on my off time so much. You know what I mean?
It was like
Working-
overload.
It was too much, and it got to the point to where my allergies were getting really bad. I couldn't fucking stand being like this jack right here. It fucking breaks me out. I can't even touch it. It's crazy.
I get it though. You're right though.
So
Grinding.
yeah, we did that, and I literally would send my resume, Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Monday. I'd send it 4 or 5 to 8 to 10 times a week.
It's impressive.
And finally, they gave me a job, and I was just a bud tender, and it was fun. First time, I was super excited.
Yeah.
I was able to afford. I wasn't getting paid bad, right, at that point, but I was able to afford
Better things.
all of that because I was doing all my shit at home too. And that's at the time where I also kind of started getting into concentrates. Nelson, he's the dude at the time that was making all of the clinic's flour into concentrates, and it was the best shit in the fucking state at that time.
The clinic was evolutionary with Giddy Up as well, a part of this with you'll definitely know more of the details of all of these things. But what was it? It was Tangi's. What was the actual? It wasn't shatter. It wasn't batter. What was it? It was live.
It was live resin.
It was live resin, but
It wasn't a batter or anything though. It was just out. We made it, purged it. I made it with him. It wasn't Tangy that we won with.
maybe it was a good
303.
303 OG.
If Giddy Up, I told him. I think I told him to listen. Maybe not, but if he is or does, I think it's 303. But yeah, he's who I actually started coming up into the hash game with. How did we meet even? I think he was just randomly in town. I knew that he was the dude I needed to fucking be next to, and I was kind of relentless on hitting him up too, and he fucking let me hang out, and we became good buds and made a shit ton of hash and did pretty well together, I think, I mean, him and Kind Bill and
It's cool.
all those guys, I was part of that for sure.
I think were a huge part of it, and I think at the time as well is that circle was so tight and it was so difficult to be a part of that. Can you tell me like some of your first memories of actually, I guess, making it to the point where you're like, I'm chilling with Giddy Up. I'm doing this. We're processing together. Nelson.
I remember the exact time. Not with Nelson, because Nelson was always awesome to me. He was standoffish at first, but then I let him try my hash and he liked it, and then we started being really cool. Nelson, to this day, we don't talk much, but we catch up like we just talked yesterday. It's pretty cool. I like Nelson a lot.
Love that.
Jen, one of his buddies, Jen Pack, is who I worked with at the lab and kind of taught me all of the things that Nelson taught them, and it's a huge influence on my whole process and whole thought about making hash, because it's production and quality. We wanted to make a shit ton of it and still have it be fire.
You're absolutely right. To really take G2 is, nobody knows what that is, but is that was one of their larger facilities, and that's where we all worked at the time. And I feel like when we put scale into perspective now, is you see facilities that exceed hundreds of thousands of square foot, but back then these grows were considered like
they were the biggest.
They were.
The one that was down fucking by Discount Fishing Tackle. I guess I know that place, obviously, but
Yeah.
The one down on Santa Fe.
Yes.
That one was at one point the biggest grow in the state for sure. Until Brad over at 710 Labs built his little 500 lighter.
Yes, which is crazy because I think when we're talking about quality and that correlation is people now have justified quality being bad because of scale. But I've seen
We were doing it.
exactly.
We were fucking doing it. At that point, there was enough money to be made off the weed where you could use good nutrients. You know what I mean?
Yes, this is true.
We were using good nutrients and putting a lot into the process. And I remember at that point in time, I mean, the reason why we all won these awards at the clinic was because of, Tom
Yes.
and Jay and all of those boys that grew the weed. And obviously, all the people that brought in the genetics. Nelson was a big part of that too. I never brought in any of the genetics, but that's the reason why I was there, was because of those genetics. 100%.
I think, and to be able to pull DNA's contract exclusively to Colorado.
Yeah, they were. Well, it's the same thing with PAX. Ryan is one of the smartest businessmen I know, Ryan Cook, and having that exclusivity was really good. Like with the Kosher Kush specifically. I mean, obviously, the owners of the company are super Jewish, and that was a huge strain. And one of my favorites still. I mean, it's a finicky sumbitch, but
Sure. Can we touch on a little bit when you say nutrients? Just because the clinic is no longer really in operations,
they're not. No, they're not. They aren't in Colorado. PAX still does their thing.
which is cool.
I just feel like they're smart about it. They saw. It's not that they failed here. They
Yeah.
definitely did not. They did great and succeeded here. I think that they're just, my guys over there are super smart, and they're like, yeah, this fucking isn't going to be great forever, so we're going to go to Pennsylvania and do this stuff and make some more money.
So the margins,
They're ahead of the game over there still, I think, all those guys that were operations over there.
just like you're talking about, is these margins and some of these obstacles people don't see is the less you pay for weed, the more we have to cut our overhead and expenses. The less employees, the less cure time, the less flush time, all of these things. So when people bitch about quality going to shit, is there's a part where you can't pay $100 for an ounce. I can tell you this right now of anything.
That's worth the shit. I mean, I got a homie on the down low. I can go get 100 ounce of fire from.
Cause he's nice. Cause he's nice. is I feel like
It's rare too that he has it though. Everybody else fucking knows about it too. I'm not saying his name because you can't buy his weed.
do you remember the nutrients line that they were using at the time and what medium they were growing in?
Well, when I first got there, it was dirt, and
Yeah.
they were using an Asian house or not house garden, Botanicare,
Oh, Botanicare.
which
It was great at it.
it was great at the time. It was.
It really was.
They used Botanicare. I remember them moving on to. Fuck.
Sunshine Mix was real popular.
Yeah, I remember that. But then they used that local company for the soil that a friend of theirs owned. I honestly can't remember the name.
That's cool though.
5280 wheat, 5280 dirt, or something like that. But it's just they were all hand watering too at that time. I mean, there wasn't those huge advancements that they have now with technology in the weed grow. And they were all HPS, and I don't know, a lot of care. I just know the guys that were running it, and it was awesome.
So
Those were the golden days for sure.
It really, really, really was. I don't think anybody will even
I'm doing
see.
a lot better financially now than I was then, but it was still really fun, you know.
Do you think that there's some like words of wisdom or guidance that you would give somebody on just from your experience there alone, looking back with like hindsight?
I don't know. I guess I'm a little different. I mean, a lot of people are just trying to get into the weed industry. It doesn't matter where they get into. They just want to get their foot in the door. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to do that, but a lot of people just don't have the work ethic as they used to. That's for sure.
I think it was like when you expressed a year of trying for this job. Is it took me 2 years to get the job at Rare Dankness. It's like things like this that you're chasing persistently, and it was so hard though, and that challenge was what was appealing. And then I think getting into these positions is. Did you feel almost like a pressure, like how people think you're just like fucking around in the weed industry? Was there like almost a pressure to like have the best at the time because you're getting this recognition? You have these guys around you.
When I got the job, there was a lot of pressure because I wanted to be better than all of them.
Yeah.
They were all friends and all were nice to me and taught me everything they know, and I was, I feel like right now they would say it was worth it. But I just wanted to learn everything from everybody. I was always asking questions. I mean, if you got to really want to, these days it's different. You got to really want to be in the weed game or have another job, and I don't know.
Pay for it.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, people ask me now like how I do decent with sales these days, and it still is kind of about all who you know. Because if you're trying to be a salesman and you're trying to come into the industry, which sales is what I do now, I'm trying to jump that far forward. But you got to do all this other stuff. You got to be a bud tender. You got to know the product. You got to know who you're dealing with. You got to make these other people money and make them feel comfortable about essentially hiring you and bringing you on for business.
So when you say that, so you were bud tending at the clinic. We'll finish up the clinic and move to your next But what happened after you were bud tending there? Did you stay bud tending the whole time that you were at the clinic?
No, actually, so I think I became. I remember. I think one of them guys over there telling me this. I was the first universal bud tender because I was one of the guys that had a car. So I was going around to all the dispensaries. Like I said, I was trying to get any kind of info I would. So I worked at every store, got to know everybody I could. I worked there in the stores for about a year. And then Nelson left. I think he went to California.
Yeah.
So it was starting to boom down there. And now that's how I met, Tyler too. He was always with Nelson. He worked at the clinic as well. You, Tyler, Nelson.
Our old co-host.
Yeah. So Nelson left. The position came open. And at this point, everybody at the clinic already knows about my hash because we're having our, monthly meetings, and I'd bring a jar of hash, and everybody would be dabbing my shit and enjoying it, and Nelson's too, obviously, both, right? I'm not saying mine was better or anything, but they knew that mine was quality and that I could possibly take that opportunity. Wow. And, then shortly after making hash for a while, I started, talking to Giddy Up and my buddy Mike Chacon and, Kind Bill, and started watching them, didn't even touch a machine forever. I can't remember if the first machine I made hash on was at the clinic or if it was at Gaia's Garden where they had a Emotech. I can't remember.
The Emotech was like $250,000.
No, not that one. It was
really.
I think the Obi Dose was like 25 or some shit.
Oh, I'm way off. Sorry, I thought it was like
they made a big one and it didn't. I don't know what happened to it, but the ones that we had were like 25K, I think, and
for a closed
loop system. Yep. Obviously, when I was making hash at home, it was with the the glass tubes and the butane.
Yeah, I feel like
definitely blew up my kitchen once or twice trying to be inventive and throw a bunch of bubble hash in the fucker, and you put the butane on the bubble hash, it just fucking condensed down to something, blows up in your face. Yeah, I had all that shit, all the research and development at my house for sure.
Oh goodness, I feel like, do you remember some of the first times that you saw a hash processed different or strains processed differently, where you were like, this does not work, or this is fantastic?
Yeah, that always. I guess it depends. I don't know. That's personal preference, I guess. There's some. I feel like all strains, if you extract them right, you get what you need to out of them.
All these hash makers out here are getting so extra, where they come in and they're like, I gotta pick this plant I'll extract, this plant I won't extract, this plant I can't tap, and what's this about?
We were doing that back in the day, for sure. I remember, Giddy Up specifically. It was the first person I seen doing that. We would go into, he would go into grows and pick out. Specifically with us, since I seen it, he would come in to the clinic and look at all the plants, and he'd pick out, have a handful of plants or however many plants it took to make enough to enter the cup.
That's cool.
So he'd go and be like, that one, we'll take that one, and he would look at, everything from the bud structure to, the trichome production, but what was always most important was the terpenes on the plant, obviously.
I love that you say this. So I've never seen any product in the recent years sold where they expand information like they did back then on what made them quality. So for instance, these bearings on these machines, of these closed loop extraction machines, is I heard that if you don't change them frequently, is you'll get heavy metal buildup and things like that. Or rumors of powder mildew, that you can kill everything and it's okay to extract powder mildew.
With weed, powdery mildew, yeah, if you use BHO to extract it, it's definitely a way to make your product safe enough to ingest. But what were you saying right before that?
Sorry, the bearings. I didn't mean to do that to you.
So, yeah, that's just typical maintenance, right? When you have a nice machine of anything that runs, whether it's, a packaging machine or a joint machine, if you don't keep it clean and keep everything nice, and if you see the gaskets starting to break down and don't replace them, that's where you're going to have issues, right? And then, there is things where people don't replace the gaskets, and or replace even the bolts, and people would definitely shoot them things through their roofs.
Dang.
There's some explosions for sure that have happened with that shit.
Do you think that there's some things that you should be concerned about as a consumer when you're looking for product on the market, as far as extracted product?
I don't know, man. I guess there's specific brands that I stick with. It's a little easier for me because I know a lot of these guys and how they process their products, so I know who to pick and choose from who's doing the best. My opinion, I mean, with rosin and stuff like that, I like to stick to a couple brands, one of them being one of the ones I sell, obviously, single source. We should try some of this, actually.
I'm so excited. Yeah. Okay, so the clinic, after you left the clinic, how did you leave the clinic? If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to.
Dude, it was all good. Just, I guess, maybe found better opportunity. I mean, it's not like they were paying me bad, but I knew that I wasn't going to survive making 40, 50K a year.
Yeah. Especially here.
Yeah, and then, after making all the hash and doing all this for, it was only a couple years, man. It really was, but it felt like it was a lifetime because we made so much goddamn hash to that place. I remember me and my buddy Armand and Jin.
Armand.
We had...
He's at Green Dot now.
He ain't doing anything now. He's got his own businesses now. He's doing really well. He was at Vera for a while. But, we had like 5 machines at one point running in that room. And I remember people watching me and it was like, almost like, I remember Jen saying it was like a ballerina because you're moving from machine to machine and you got all your timing in your head. And like, if anybody talks to you, you're like, don't fucking bother me. Because you got to be so on point. It's a dangerous job, and that's one thing I can gladly say is, like earlier, I did all my R&D in my kitchen, so I knew how to not blow the lab up.
I was going to ask you about what is it when everybody was doing this is you would take the actual Pyrex and put the product in it, and you would like take the butane gun and kind of put it over and burn like the excess. I knew it was like kind of sketchy, but it was something that...
We never did that.
Okay.
Never.
What do you think? Have you ever witnessed people doing this?
Yes.
Okay, I just.
We would never do that.
There's a lot of risk.
I mean,
here.
it's not like it was that much better, but we would use the hot plate and whip it on the hot plate. You know what I mean? We would
a little bit safer.
Put like direct flame, I guess, almost to it, because those heat guns it's not a flame, but it might as fucking well be.
I just want people to know that are trying to experiment in some of these other places. Certain things you shouldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can definitely recommend is if you're gonna make hash at home, just stick to the rosin.
I love that.
Just do that. I mean, don't go around fucking around with butane and blowing up your houses. Leave that to people who kind of have the opportunity to do it. Luckily I was a part of the very first Class 1 Division 2 and Class 1 Division 1
lab
at the clinic. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we know dealing with OSHA and building out these labs and, the ungodly amount of money that they spent to do that.
Think about what they require now. They're like, put a sink in here.
That's for the rosin.
For the rosin.
They still require the Class 1 Division 1 lab for anything butane or anything like that.
But I see where this fat of like rosin is so hot and heavy that now I see like shatter is not a desired product or butane extracted, I guess. And I'm like, that is cruel after this investment.
It's not. I mean, it's kind of dead. You're making if you're using BHO lately, I've been seeing a lot of people do it in infused joints.
Oh, okay, you're right.
That is vape carts.
Oh, really?
But you can't really. I mean, I do sales for my buddy Adam over at Colorado's Best Abs. He does live resin, but the number one SKU we sell is like a 4-gram butterball.
Really?
It's like, dude, it's 4 gram. It's a 4-gram butterball I sell for like $16, and the shit looks great. Wow. So like for your store, it would be good. To be honest, I was one of the SKUs I was going to talk to you about.
Half good.
It's cheap. You guys could make money off of it, and that's the thing. I'm in a couple different chains with it, and people can't keep it on their shelves. People are back to whatever fucking doesn't cost as much and gets them high.
And you have such a diverse...
Like weed crackheads. I just want to get high.
It's so true. Like, you have to supply those margins in these things. Thank you. I need to check on this.
I got you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think, okay, when we talk about these margins, we talk about the shifts in this industry completely, is back to trade shows, to bringing backpackers in, competitions, is how did you get to the point of working with Weed Maps? And
Yeah.
Weed Maps was huge too. You started basically when they were a baby company.
So they started in 2008,
Dang.
and it was because of the clinic that I got to know the Weed Maps guys, because the clinic down there on Colorado Boulevard was attached to the Weed Maps office,
Yes.
and the guys at Weed Maps still liked our hash. Luckily, after Nelson left, and Mark was always a great friend of Nelson, and Mark Scruggs is who was the GM at the time there, and that was my into Weed Maps. I met him, and I was always giving him hash, and we became great friends. And my daughter calls him Uncle Mark. We were just there in his swim pool just this last weekend. So, I just somehow they liked me enough to where they brought me into their circle, and they saw that I was kind of looking for something different and to not do hash anymore. Which was when I had my daughter. Wow. After the clinic, just to kind of keep things in timeline status, I left there. Everybody was cool. I'm still great friends with a lot of those people. I went on to start doing some contract work, helped a couple other labs get started, and then, the main thing I did was at the time my buddy Jared, who was running the production part of the lab. Ooh. With all of the numbers and taking care of deliveries and making sure everything was good on that end. He went over to Native Roots and was in charge of building their entire lab at their mothership. So I went in there while they were building out the lab. They had a crew there at their other lab, and I did a contract run for them, helped them bring in a nice crew and people that could do the job. And it was a fun job.
So you're basically consulting for...
I did consulting, correct, yeah.
And for one of the biggest license holders at that point in the state as well. Still, yeah, Native Roots.
I think they got like 25 strong or something right now.
That's insane, honestly. But I think, were you intimidated coming into that role, or did it feel natural at that point?
I went in there like a fucking asshole. It was awesome.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
I went in there and, the guys that were running the lab at that point weren't as tight. They weren't doing it right, in my opinion. And I knew that I could do better. And I was being nice at first, but then at one point you just had to take over, right? Because that's what you're there for. So I called up, after realizing these guys weren't up for the job, I called up the boss at the time and convinced him to get rid of everybody. And Jared and I got everybody in there. And, Jared ran that lab after I left and went on to run the mothership and do a lot of amazing things for Native Roots afterwards for probably 8 years, 7 years. So
it's a long run.
Yeah, a long run. And, thankful that he brought me onto that situation. It was fun. It was awesome.
And then after you started this building out all these labs, then where did your journey take you after?
Well, I did 3 labs total. The one Native Roots is the one that the other 2 weren't, legit yet. So I don't even know if they even became legit, to be honest.
That's not your fault, though.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But I actually, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but if I remember right, I think I called up Mark and said, I want to do sales. I want to get the hell out of Colorado for a couple of years. Can you get me a job at Weed Maps? I just asked him, and he had me apply and go through the whole process. And obviously, because of who he knows, luckily they thought I could do the job.
We had tremendous experience at that point.
Well, right, but that was only in the hash game. So my name in the hash game actually kind of got me the job there too. But yeah, I packed up all my shit. This was after my daughter was born, even moved to California. And I was like, yo, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to learn sales, learn how to connect with a bunch of people, and then move back and be a dad and not be a fucking trapper or even a legal hash maker. I didn't want to grow or make hash no more. Right?
Very classy.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I moved to Orange County in 2016, maybe late 2015.
Colorado tanked around that time, 2016, 2017.
Yeah. And obviously, while it tanked, they're like, "Hey, Elias, since you moved here, you're going to start with the Colorado people."
Of course, of course. They're like, good luck.
Yeah. So, I was definitely, I was doing billing at first, just calling people up, making sure their weed map page was up to date and that they were using it correctly, and pitching them to have more additions to their page.
As far as those that don't know what weedmaps.com is, which everybody should check out and know, but those that don't, how is the best way that you could describe this?
It is your Amazon/Google Maps for weed. You can go to the website and search either a specific strain you're looking for, a dispensary you heard of, vape, flower, category, whatever you want, and find the place near you that has something that you're looking for. So it's literally, you search Google Maps for the nearest bakery. That's what you do with weed maps for dispensaries.
It is brilliant.
Yeah. The guys that started it are amazing, and they gave me a great opportunity, and it was awesome to go down there and learn, and just learn billing and learning how to take hot calls and deal with people when you're trying to get money that they don't want to deal with it. It's the old Golden Meds days. I was dealing with all them and everybody else trying to get paid, and then they started the brands platform. A couple of the guys there had an idea to. It's not just about the stores. It's starting. Weed is starting to get branded now.
Very much so.
Especially in California, I think obviously were the first people to start branding weed, even before
cookies
even before cookies. You started to see Champelli.
Oh, definitely.
You start hearing stuff like that, and the old Mac Dre hip hop. So that was a brand back in 2000. So brands started coming in, and people wanted to buy that specific shit from that person, and whoever was and I can't remember whose idea it was, but they started bringing on all the brands, and I was lucky enough to be brought on, and I was in charge of bringing on all of the Colorado brands. I had some California brands, I had some Washington and Oregon brands, so that was really where I kind of broke out and was able to meet everybody in almost every state that we were operating in at the time.
You're West Coast dominating.
Yeah,
and more.
It's just how I became known. I feel, I was never. My goal was never like I'm saying. This is my first podcast, right? So my goal was never really to be on shows and have my face shown and stuff like that. My goal was to get to know the bosses and make moves with them, right? So that was it for me. I was able to meet all these owners of these companies, and because I was the single guy there at the time, they're all like, "Elias, you're going to the library, and you're gonna hang out with these guys." And, a lot of my good friends there, and and when I was at WeedMaps, all we did was party and connect. That's all we did. That's all I did, for sure.
See, but I think that people don't understand sometimes. Just to hear you say that, it's very humble, and it's interesting because I want to ask you where. That if you recognize and see in yourself that at one point you were looking at these companies like one day I'll work with you and grow with you, but then to actually be independently consulting on labs and being so revolutionary through such a young time and sticking it out now, building these relationships, expanding so far, do you ever stop and think how incredible that really is to be like the hidden gem that's not flexing but is making all the moves behind the scenes, is doing all the
yeah, I'm definitely happy and proud of the work that I've done, and blessed to be in the weed industry because I'd still be doing this either way if whether it was legal or not. So I'm glad I could pay my taxes, and obviously it would be different having a kid and working in this if it wasn't legal. But no, I really don't think about it a lot, because it's day by day work. I like what I do, but at this point, I'm just trying to, think about my future. And it's cool that it's in weed. And when I'm back home, when I'm talking to some of my friends, right, they're all like, "Oh, it's crazy, man. We all knew you'd have something to do with weed, and here you are, drug kingpin." It's like, yeah, legal drug kingpin, but yeah,
I
you
love
know, I mean, when I go back home, they'll ask me what I'm doing if I haven't seen them in 15 years, and I tell them I still sell drugs. But I pay my taxes now. You know?
I feel like that's so respectable to have begun your journey so long ago and truly still be in it, like you said. There's not a lot of people. So what are you currently up to?
Well, right now, so I was at Weed Maps until 2018, and because of my connections, that's how I met, you know, Al Harrington over at Viola, and, you know, they helped me move back to Colorado, and that was my first official sales gig for a brand, not Weed Maps, and, you know, it was great. It was all during COVID and shit, too, so it was kind of, you know, we were wondering if we were going to survive, and then all of a sudden we were making more money than we ever had.
Jason calls them voila, by the way, he thinks they have beautiful product. But those Viola's been around for a long time too.
Yeah, they were. I mean, I started talking to them guys on the Brands platform in 2016, and they were one of the first, if I can remember, medical brands. They stuck to medical for a long time before they actually went rec. I don't think they went rec until 2016. And rec was what, 2014, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just had a connection, met Al at MJ BizCon.
That's cool.
Yeah, I had a meeting with him, and I was nervous, so I went and drank like 3 big old drinks of vodka and then walked down to the floor and met him. And, you know, it worked out great, and he ended up hiring me, and, you know, he literally moved me back to Colorado. They paid for my way, and it was a great experience working for them. You know, shit kind of fell through. It was just as far as, like, you know, the timing and, you know, product changes and just, you know, staff that maybe shouldn't have been hired, but you know, they are a big reason why I am where I am as well, and worked with them for I think about 2 years, and left that place, and that's when I got on. I went from there to Harmony, worked for there for I think it was a year and a half. It feels like could have been less.
Harmony Extracts. It's a big name too, though. Like,
Yeah.
obviously all these are, but I'm saying as far as the hash game, they're still placing first out at Spanibus and all kinds of goodies.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that's what was kind of catchy to these people that were hiring salespeople, is I am the guy that knows a lot about the product and has put hands on it for a long time, and
Smoked it.
yeah, I know what I'm selling. You know, there's a lot of people that sell out here that don't even smoke. You know, so
It's unfortunate
Very.
that it's saturated with that. Okay, so consulting really quick, because I never get to talk to. Thank you so
sorry about
much. Is okay. You gotta help me with this. I know this is ridiculous, but I always fuck this thing up.
when it vibrates, it's ready.
Thank you so much.
That's it.
Thank you.
Real simple.
Is just made my whole day.
Just be careful. That 3D XL chamber, fucking
It'll
a small rib.
give me see
Fucks you up.
because they wouldn't fuck with me. Carta did. Carta sponsored me, but not Puffco. Hope they hear this. Is I hold on.
See, the only reason why I'm a Puffco fan is because I Roger might not remember me per se, but I've known him since the Clinic Golf Tournament days. Puffco would sponsor the Clinic Golf Tournament. And
That was massive.
yeah, he was there. He was there. He was still living in New York at the time, way before the Puffco Peak, way before any of those. It was literally just the vape pen.
You know him.
I wouldn't say I really know him because I can't pick up the phone and call him, right? But I wouldn't say he remembers me. Maybe he does, but he's met a lot of people. But we were definitely in, you know, worked that golf tournament, and I know Ryan Cooks introduced me to him several times. But
I'm gonna be like, Elias made me love you again.
he could be like me. Like they say, I think I listened to it on a podcast recently. Like they say your brain can only store like 100 or something names at a time. I think mine's a little bit less. I forget names like crazy. I'm terrible at it.
I don't even believe you. I think you just got like
I
thousands.
got great long-term memory, but terrible short-term memory.
This is delicious.
Yeah,
I can't finish it. I wish I could. Maybe I can try.
No, you're good. I didn't expect you to actually, but you hammered it. This is sour papaya from Single Source.
Really?
In my opinion, they have the best hash in the state. You know what I mean? For sure. That's why I work with them. Not alone, let alone, you know, obviously they're good friends of mine, but we'll get to that obviously here in just a sec.
I can't wait. But consulting, what are the biggest, when you talk about these staff obstacles, I never get to talk to people about this, is
When people being in the wrong roles and wrong, what do you mean by that? And
I mean, obviously in this industry, there's nepotism everywhere, and you're either a cousin of the owner or one of their best friends or someone. A lot of people. I mean, even I'm guilty of it, but luckily I came through to be not fake. But sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. A lot of people do that in this weed industry.
too far sometimes.
Yeah, too far. Where they think they can do a big job and they get in that position and they're completely overwhelmed because A, they've came from a different background of sales, and B, when you don't touch weed and you don't know people, it's a lot harder work, man.
I think a lot of people have the illusion in hash and working in the grow or anything that it's going to be a lot more fun. And I think when you have to, what do you think?
I have fun every day, but I mean, there's struggles for sure. I mean, making hash struggles. I mean, the worst thing. Luckily, I can deal with people. I feel, and I'm pretty personable.
Very.
But I know that working in a dispensary now would be so hard dealing with people because you try to educate someone, and they don't want to hear what you have to say. That's what I hear a lot is people come in and they want their highest testers, and they don't want to hear what the bud tenders have to say.
It's very true.
Not that bud tenders are miseducated, which a lot of them are, but even the ones that are trying to educate aren't getting heard. So it's kind of weird.
I feel you're absolutely correct.
It's weird. It's a weird disconnect. I don't know. I just think it's so easy to where they either know what they want or the person's going to listen to you and take whatever you're going to give them.
Where do you think that comes from?
Just shopping in general.
I think you're right. I think it's weird that people pick up weed and they're like, this isn't trimmed a certain way. And I'm just like, I'm a connoisseur smoker, and I've never given a fuck about this.
Well, it comes from alcohol is what I think it really comes from, right? Because when you're buying alcohol, being where I'm from, and Utah being right there, they're all looking at percentages on the alcohol. The higher the percentage, the more you're going to get fucked up. So everybody thinks that, right? If that must transfer over to weed too, if that's the case. And that was a lot of, backwards teaching as well. People were telling people, hey, if it's 30% THC, it's going to be the best one.
Yeah.
And, I'll be honest, I mean, I can't remember, there was no testing back then, but I used to smoke this purple weed back in the day in Bakersfield. It get me so stoned, there's no way it would test more than 20%, 18, 14. Like all the purple Urkels and,
love that shit.
any purple bud, really, they're more, I don't know, I feel like that's a real medicine for some reason. They test lower and they're full of everything else, the other cannabinoids.
I completely agree with you. So single source. Yeah. Which one would you like to talk about? We can talk about Vera.
Oh, we'll do all of them as
Yeah.
well since I got them here, right?
Please.
I mean, single source, my buddy Tony and my buddy Ken Wall own the company. Ken is definitely renowned for, his rosin. He's been winning. He won, Cannabis Cups. He's won, what was Dougie's event, the Hitman. He took so many awards home during that.
It's one of Jason's favorite companies, honestly.
Yeah, Jason definitely knows Tony and them. They actually told me to say hi to both of you. And I just think they do it right. They use, nice nutrients. They literally keep the name to the brand. Everything in their product is done from in-house, single source. And they are one of the few that actually grow OGs still, which, a lot of people don't want to do that because they don't yield enough or sometimes they take a little longer. So that, as far as any of their products, like their flour, that's why I like their OGs. And you remember Cam back in the day?
Of course.
So
it's like the only other female.
They're big in California right now. Obviously, shout out Anna. She's definitely a huge mentor of mine.
Yes.
So Tony came from that situation. He was one of the guys that worked at the dispensary for a while. They shared a lot of genetics and have a lot of the same growing qualities. So if you're looking for something that's some of the highest quality in the state, that's it. It's wholesale. It's a $20 jar. You know what I mean? I think that's what they do. I mostly sell this rosin for them, but
really,
yeah, because I don't want to step out. Do too many brands. Like to sell multiple pre-pack brands is one thing. You know, both, it's just you don't want to sell a shit ton of brands, and you want to keep it kind of close knit, and you don't want to overlap, right? So
We're trying to be very selective at the store because we want to educate people on what quality is for real. It's not just putting it on our marketing, but actually explaining to you in our products why quality means that. Single source,
Yeah.
wonderful job.
and that's one of the things that they stick to. They don't have like a minimum order. They know it's a heady product, and some stores either push them or they don't. So these guys they just like to be on shelves and support. Small. I mean, I think they only have maybe 100 lights, maybe 150. So
That's pretty cool to see nowadays. It is
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, no doubt. They do well. And then, the main company that, I work for and have had the opportunity to be with and after Harmony is Vera. They are out of Boulder. Their facility is amazing. It's an indoor sun house, right?
Yeah.
It's a greenhouse kind of effect because they get the sun, but they're using supplemental lighting, so they use supplemental LEDs. Definitely, I've been in so many grows. One of the cleanest facilities I've been in. There's in single source for sure. I've been with them for a little over 2 years. I was the sales director, but decided just to kind of just stay with the sales role myself and just hustle.
Yeah.
But they have, they work with plenty of really good growers, genetic people. As far as this Randy Marsh here, we got apples and bananas and Gary Payton. This is from Gowdy Farms, but I think on Instagram they're Parlor Genetics.
This is
I think
gorgeous
it's
packaging.
they do great, man. This guy Brandon out of NorCal. One of our owners is really good friends with him and was able to establish a relationship. And I don't think anybody else has stuff like this. He runs a lot of Gary Payton crosses. He runs a lot of Red Velvet crosses as well.
Ooh, I like that red velvet.
But that's definitely my favorite one that I'm smoking on right now. From them for sure. It's amazing.
I want to smoke some of this.
Well, that's your guys'. So. Yeah, and like I said, like these brands that I'm showing you right now, they're all under the same roof, right? So same way of growing, just different strains, different thought process on the genetics that we bring in, and for being all under one roof, it is kind of quite different, We also do Takal, which is Method Man's brand.
Very cool.
If you're young, please look on your Spotify and search Method Man or Wu-Tang and educate yourself. I don't have the time to educate you.
Oh, let's just
Please
throw
do
it up.
it. That's kind of one of the main reasons why I took this job. I mean, I know the owners and I've worked with them at Viola previously, but being a part of a brand like this and being a big fan of that whole movement of hip hop kind of just made sense for me to do. And, I honestly, like, not on purpose, but I have a history of working for Black-owned businesses. So I guess, want to keep that too. I always want to have a good Black-owned business to work for, or minority-owned in general, And Viola, Harmony with, Lil Wayne and Jakua. I did that for a little bit. Then, Takal with Method Man. And it's fun to be a part of it. They have fire weed too, man.
I don't think a lot of people know that about Harmony as well.
Yeah. Well, I just felt like Jakua had a great opportunity, but they just didn't. Lil Wayne didn't support the brand enough. There's just many things that went into that and why it didn't work out. You know what I mean?
I think it's crazy.
They weren't growing their own product. That's the main thing, right? They were buying it from other people and packaging it.
Way too expensive.
No money in it.
No money, yeah. I feel these are some of the obstacles that I think people would never guess of what it ends up costing you. But everything that you have over here, Vera, I've actually seen on Instagram their grow, and I've always wanted to walk it because
Yeah, come on up.
oh,
I can make it happen.
decade maker.
Yeah, we can come through. You can come through. I mean, the grow is super nice in there anytime. Like, I think I've been there, like I said, for 2 years, and I've maybe seen PM on a plant or two, but they're so, rigorous about their process that if there is a PM on 1 or 2 plants, you know, the whole room's got to.
I think this is important though, is I've been trying to touch on a lot of pest and disease eradication issues, and I've been trying to be real because we all have very strong names and quality and we all care, you know, so much. But there's an unrealistic part that people keep displaying because of social media to me of saying that there's no powder mildew or saying that there's no times that you'll get insects or that has to tank your quality. I hate to say this, but like sometimes you'll hit obstacles during certain parts of the year. Take care of it, like you said, eradicate these issues.
Right, and you know when those issues happen, which it's natural and just the process too. Like
Living thing.
you got to, because of how rigorous the testing is here. I mean, I haven't looked into it a lot, but I'm assuming the testing here is even crazier than like testing tomatoes and
It's parts per billion.
organic
It's insane now.
organic products, right? So yeah, I mean it's a little strange. I mean, especially coming from the area where I was getting bricks of Mexican dirtweed with, you know, dead mice in them and rolls of fucking pennies, and it's weird. It's weird with all these regulations. It needs to happen, obviously, but it's a little too much, I think, for sure. But
I think it's making people do shadier things, honestly. Instead of creating or producing a safer product, now they're whatever. That's a whole different episode.
I just feel like rad sourcing, radon.
What do you think about this?
It's weird. I mean, everybody has to do it. A lot of people do it. I don't know too many who don't.
A lot of people don't know what that means. Rad sourcing.
So it's you know, it's a machine that essentially, if you have a little bit of PM or anything like that, powdery mildew, or what they do is they run it through this radon machine and it zaps it out of it, and the process ends up making it to where the product can be ingestible. Long story short,
Safe.
I mean, it makes it safe, I guess, but I am a little sketchy about it. It's nothing that these growers want to do, but at the same time, these growers don't want to lose a whole entire crop and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not only do they not want to, they can't afford it. So you got to do that shit. So, I mean, it's being brought on us obviously by these regulations, and I feel like if there's any time that, I don't know, I'm just going to say this. I feel like if there's any time that weed is going to end up causing cancer or killing somebody, it would be because of radon. I mean, don't we have radon issues in Colorado where, you know, people die from being exposed to it?
Yes, I completely agree.
Is that the same? I mean, I'm just saying this, and please correct me if anybody's on here, but I feel like if that shit's killing you, I don't know if it's the same rate. I mean, radon's radon as far as I know, but it's got to be the same shit that they're, you know, running your weed with. So
It's very concerning.
yeah.
I feel like Jeremy, for some reason, he comes to mind because you say Harmony Extracts, and I just want to acknowledge Jeremy because he's another OG and hash extractor in the game. Master
Yeah.
is how did you meet? Did you meet Jeremy at Harmony?
No, I met Jeremy at, what was it again? Mahatma.
Dang, Mahatma.
Again, I was just a fan
Crushed
of
it.
concentrates, and they were doing good back then, and they had some nice strains that I liked, and I think I just randomly walked up to their tent at one of the cannabis cups and introduced myself, and we hit it off right away. Jeremy and I are fucking brothers, man, for sure.
I think it's really cool because Mahatma, I worked at Lightshade at the time as a bud tender and on the retail side. And Mahatma was one of the first hash brands as well, though, that had multiple strains. So, like, our shelf at Lightshade was full of their strains, like, which nobody else had at the time. Nobody could compete with them. Yeah. And it was like that high-end quality kind of niche, true shatter.
Yeah, they were doing good back then. I mean, from what I know, there's one person that was involved there that ran the business into the ground. I don't even like saying the guy's name, but Shannon, who was the Shannon Wilson, who was the owner, she's still great. I mean, if it would have been just her and Jeremy there, they might still be running to this day. You never know.
It's sad when you see things like that. But then at the same time, I think both of those people probably ended up doing better things.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
perhaps.
Jeremy was trying to get part of that company and be an owner for a while, and now he is. Look at him now. I mean, he's the man.
I think it's cool to see him tied in to Harmony Extracts as one of the owners, because I think it's something you hope for all of us that started in the beginning and that truly put so much time and passion and effort into creating these brands or creating these names or owning something. I mean, is the ultimate goal, I think, for all of us.
Man, I don't know. I mean, for me,
Yeah, what do you think?
kind of like where I'm at. I like doing the sales
Love
side of
it.
things and just making money, and it allows me to spend the time I need with my daughter. I like the sales. I mean, right now I feel like that's one of the only places money's being made.
I was gonna say it really truly is, and I think that I don't know. It shows though that you're diverse as a person, to be able to adapt with the times, to be able to still stay involved. Your life, I think that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still goal orientated, even though it's the weed industry, right? I have friends who are lawyers and friends who do all this, and they're like, "Oh, I'm super career driven," and they make it seem like I'm not. And I'm like, dude, I don't think you understand. I've been doing this weed thing all my life. That's all I have is a career driven life. Luckily I have my daughter, but I'm definitely looking forward to where this goes and looking forward to helping this become federally legal in any way I can, and just kind of riding the weed wave. I don't plan on really going anywhere.
I love that, Elias. Is there anything that we should touch on before we wrap this up?
I can't think of much, man. It's good to be here. Fun first podcast. Usually don't like to make things too much about me, so
What
it was good to kind of talk.
we need to make it more about you more often.
you're good.
We'll have to bring you back on. I would love to honestly bring you on and have you talk a little bit more on like actual tech of extraction, because we have a lot of listeners that would love to learn a little bit more about what this even means.
Yeah, kind of you forget that, there's probably people in like backwoods Louisiana making BHO and shit.
Straight up. Do you remember TC Labs really quick?
Oh yeah, I know all those guys very well.
That's what I think that was sad. They were like crushing too. I was just going through some of my old clothes when I was trying to find this hoodie, and I was like, wow, TC Labs, Mahatma, wild. You've been a part of
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah, no, I know all those guys from TC Labs as well, and they were definitely it was them and the lab that were probably making the best back then. So
It's pretty cool.
yeah, no doubt.
Well, Elias, thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I would love to have you come back anytime you would like.
Sure.
And we'll put in the description tonight all of your information so people can find you on Instagram if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Any of your other social media accounts, you just text them to me. We will get them up there. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media, but if you look, all you'll see is pictures of my dogs and,
we should have talked about your fishing.
yeah, I fish a lot, that's for sure. When I'm not thinking about selling drugs, I'm on the river, that's for sure.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you, chat, for hanging in there this evening. I hope that you guys give some love to Elias. It took a lot of courage to come on. I know this is not his last podcast. So we will touch in soon. All right. Peace and love, squad.
So yeah, thank you.